So my name's Conrad Thomason, and I'd like to welcome you all to my first ever webinar about improving the virtual capability of project teams. This webinar will be about 30 minutes. I've got a few slides that are prepared, which should take about 20 minutes. So that leaves about 10 minutes at the end for any questions or any suggestions that you may have to how you think we can improve the capability of your project teams. Just to let you know, this webinar is going to be recorded, so I hope you're all okay with that. We'll also send you a copy of this webinar later. It'll also be available on our website, and I think at some point we're going to put this on YouTube too. So let's make a start. So I work for a company called Intelligent Systems Limited, who are digital and IT infrastructure specialists. And my responsibility there is to head up the business consulting practice. And as many of you know, probably the majority of my life is spent out in the field planning and delivering projects. So these last 2 to 3 weeks have been really, really challenging for me, which is really why I wanted to put this webinar together to share some ideas, some strategies which I think can help us project people improve our virtual capabilities and push our projects through and come through this crisis and possibly future crises much stronger. So the biggest problem for me about working remotely is that I believe that the cornerstones of any successful project are teamwork, communication and collaboration, and the most efficient and effective way to achieve that is through what's called co-location. If any of you, like me, are an Agile practitioner, you'll be familiar with a person called Alistair Cockburn. Now, he coined the phrase osmotic communication, which is all about how information flows in the background of teams. Now, the only way or the best way to achieve that is by seating people in the same room. Also, when you're working under the same roof, it's so much easier to get cues from people about how they're thinking and how they're feeling. And there's so many more opportunities to have informal conversations, which are really important for motivation and morale. Also, problem solving is a spontaneous act that is much easier to do, to gather resources together and collectively brainstorm some ideas. But the reality is everything has changed, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So it's really important now that we as project people start to look for ways to bring our teams together so they can work more collaboratively and somehow replicate the same benefits which are so easily achievable when you're working under the same roof. So this is why I want to talk through 7 of my top tips or ideas to improve the virtual capabilities of your project teams. In fact, I think anyone who is able to replicate and harness the benefits that you can achieve from co-location will not only see their project succeed, but will come through this and future crises much stronger. So this might seem a little obvious and probably very familiar with a lot of these tools, but the first thing to do is to make sure that your teams have the right tools to be able to collaborate and communicate effectively, and not only that, to use them in the right way. So you're probably very familiar with GoToMeetings. I think Boris uses Zoom and also Cisco. So subscribe to these tools and make sure they're a default for your project team members. Also, you can add these tools as a plugin to their Gmail or Outlook accounts. So when they invite someone, it's very easy to invite them to a virtual meeting with a very simple click. Also, make sure that all your team members have a camera. Now, most of us have a camera inbuilt into our laptops or PCs, but not everyone has a camera. So make sure they have a camera. And cameras can be quite expensive, but there are lots of simple, inexpensive add-ons you can download too. I don't know if you're familiar with these, Slack and Microsoft Teams. These are really great tools for projects and programs, providing they're used in the right way. If you have separate channels which you can use for different purposes, it can be really efficient and really effective. It can stop a lot of this multitasking that happens in these project face-to-face environments. It can also allow you to dip in and out of information And also it reduces a lot of the email exchanges because you're getting the right teams to talk to each other in the right way. I run a lot of daily stand-ups, and I use what's called a Kanban tool to visually track the progress of work through each stage. Now, you can easily replace the physical Kanban boards with electronic boards too. There's a tool called Trello, which I find really useful, and it's free. But one of the things that annoys me the most when you do these video conferences is when the person who's talking or presenting keeps dipping in and out because of poor bandwidth or poor connectivity. So make sure that your teams can conduct a bandwidth capacity test, and make sure that they also take a screen dump of that and send that to an expert who can interpret the results and take some actions on it. And then there's another top tip that I came up with just before this meeting, which is a number of times now I've been having video conferences where there's been some kind of technical glitch. So I think you need to factor that into your meeting time and start your meetings a little bit earlier. Now, this is something that's become something of a policy here at Intelligence Systems Limited. And I think video and making sure video has so many more benefits over just dialing in. You can see much more human connection, you can get more body language, you can see people's facial expressions. Also, it might sound obvious, but when everybody dials in and uses video, you can see everybody in the meeting. And that means you can actually encourage collaboration and participation. Now, it might feel a little awkward first, especially on bad hair days, but it will soon become natural. And you'll enjoy it, and you'll thank me for it. One of the things I think you should do as well, another tip, is to try to make your virtual office as comfortable as possible so you don't feel embarrassed about dialing in. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder here, my little girl has done this little card about thanking the NHS, and she keeps moving it around the house. She's put it in here today because I'm running a webinar, but every time I look at it, it makes me smile. Now, improving virtual capabilities is not just about technology, it's not just about the tools, but it's also about process too. And one of the things that happens quite a lot with projects is meetings. In fact, probably far too many of them. And great meetings, they don't just happen, they're planned events. So I think it's really important when you're holding your virtual meetings that you put some effort behind planning them and making them effective as possible too. So in the time spent planning and delivering, reviewing the meeting, I think you need to spend about 40% of your time preparing it, getting the agenda structured, making sure the objectives are clear, understanding all the people who are going to be involved in the meeting, what their roles are, ironing out any issues beforehand, and making sure everyone has access to the right tools, which I mentioned at the beginning. When you conduct the meeting, it's important to understand everyone's expectations, make sure the objectives are understood and really clear, and try to practice good meeting behaviours. Don't let the same individuals keep driving the same conversations. Record any ideas and actions and decisions too. Also, to make your meetings better and better, it's important that you review the objectives and the expectations set at the beginning of the meetings, and also ask everyone what they thought went well and didn't go so well. And that's a really important opportunity for people to give some feedback around the tools or the technologies that were being used. And follow up with team members promptly. Make sure you get the meeting notes out there fast and follow up with any next steps. Now, there are some tools out there, or features and tools, which can be used to replicate a lot of the experiences that are so easily achieved in face-to-face environments. Now, virtual meetings can feel a little less engaging. They can feel a little less interactive. Often that's down to the qualities and the skills of the facilitator. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, a lot of meetings I've been to face-to-face have been counterproductive because what tends to happen, you get that same individual that's driving the conversation. So there's lots of chat features and messaging out there which you can use to increase engagement, increase participation, increase collaboration, and most importantly, increase inclusion. So in fact, for example, if you're trying to vote for a project Rather than let the person continually voting for their pet project and pushing their pet projects for you, you can use little voting facilities to ask everyone to make a vote on the preferred project and the reasons why. Then the facilitator can replay the results, and you can get more consensus around the way forward. Also, for problem solving, it's really useful too. Rather than having the same person coming up with all the ideas, you can collectively use brainstorming or messaging tools to brainstorm the ideas and then use voting to be able to select the preferred one. Also, there are lots of online tools which are really useful to find out how people are feeling, which is, I think, really important, especially during these lonely times, called a temperature check. And also, you can engage people in the project much better by asking them to vote on what they think the focus should be in the next sprint or next iteration or phase of the project. You know, should we focus on development? Should we focus on documentation? Should we focus on process? And finally, there's a lot of people are very familiar with emojis, and I've walked into the boardroom thousands of times where I felt really intimidated and often quite awkward when the person or the directors within the room just look disinterested with what you're saying. So I would encourage people in their virtual meetings to use emojis. So when somebody walks into the video, the virtual chat room, is you use a wave at them. When they're presenting the results of some research or providing a status report, give them a thumbs up. I think if you use emojis, that's going to promote what I would call richer dialogue and also instill some confidence in the people who are participating in the meeting. Problems. Now, every project it's a common occurrence to have problems, and these are often quite easily solved when you are working under the same roof. You'll see everyone run to the edge of the office or into the project room, get the whiteboard out and start whiteboarding and brainstorming things. But there are structured processes that you can put in place too, which can make problem solving, team building equally as effective. And we put this 7-step process together. What you need to start with is you need to understand the roles or the players that are going to be involved in the problem that you're trying to solve. So what you'll usually have is what's called a facilitator. And that person's going to own the process. And they're basically going to help everyone get everything done in less time. And they're going to manage the content of the meeting and preparing the materials. Then what you'll have is the customer. They're the person who will own the problem and make any decisions. And they'll provide some leadership to the workshop too. Then you have everyone else who are the team members. And basically they're the people going to help the customer get to where they want to go. And they're also going to be responsible for some of the actions and next steps to actually solve the problem. Then when you're running your virtual workshop, it's about following these 7 steps. So headline the problem, share it on a screen, but make sure the problem statement is really clear, is really specific, and it's action orientated. Prepare the customer too, so he can provide some background to everyone participating in the workshop about the problem and explain why he wants it or she wants it solved. You can use messaging functions or features to brainstorm some of the best ideas, but make sure you stick to time limit. Don't work any of the ideas and make sure no idea is a bad idea. Then with the customer, you can categorize ideas and use chat features to select which ones are the best ones, and then put some benefits and concerns around those ideas, which helps clarify the solution. If there are any critical concerns, you may need to go back and generate some brainstorming activities again. Otherwise, you may need to hold even a separate problem-solving team building workshop. But if not, it's about developing a clear action plan, following it up, and then incorporating those actions into your daily stand-ups. So problem-solving team building as a structured process can be used for virtual meetings too. Now, it's time to be more agile. Now, although one of the core principles of Agile is co-location, as I mentioned before, there are lots of really great tools out there which can help you communicate and collaborate effectively. My last project had 22 projects, 7 work streams. We used what was called Microsoft Teams, which is really, really useful, a useful messaging platform. So we had a separate channel for each work stream, which made everyone work more productively, and it eliminated the need for use for email communication. We used to run also our stand-ups using electronic Kanban boards, which were really good. Trello, I think I mentioned before, is great. And also at the end of each sprint, what we'd often do is a sort of what's called a show and tell. Now those are normally better done face to face, but you can equally replicate them remotely, but try to make them feel as real as possible. There are also processes in place you can use, such as effective meeting management, which I mentioned before, which will help you plan, do and structure your sprint planning, reviews and retrospective workshops effectively. And also if you use our problem-solving team building process, that can help you resolve issues quickly and reach consensus collectively. One of the biggest challenges I find about working remotely is keeping the spirits up. When you're working under the same roof, there's so many opportunities to have informal conversations around the water cooler or having a coffee or early in the mornings. But those can easily be replicated. Here at Intelligence, we've introduced these weekly informal team chats to give everyone a mental break and to talk about nothing to do with COVID-19. Last week, we all, 2 or 3 of the members, had a bit of a jam, which I thought was fantastic because we're finding things out about our teams that perhaps we wouldn't have done if we were working face to face. Also, have an informal channel available throughout so people can dip in and out of that channel to bring some levity and fun to the working day. And also having a location channel can also be quite useful for people who are working from similar locations or similar sites, so they can share local knowledge and share local information. Take regular breaks from your screens if you can, and where possible, and follow government guidelines on this, is get some fresh air. And use some of the chat surveys I mentioned about before to keep track of how everybody's feeling. But make sure to try to keep it anonymous and where possible, always follow up. So if you follow some of these simple strategies, some of these simple processes and some of these simple tools and try to replicate the benefits that are easily achieved from working together under the same roof, then what you'll find is it will increase the speed and success of your project. It'll help you come through this crisis with a competitive advantage. If you use the messaging platforms effectively and efficiently, that can help your teams perform more productively and reduce a lot of these emails. Also, it can help your teams communicate and collaborate effectively. And if you use some of the chat features and messaging I talked about, that can increase engagement, inclusion, and stop and avoid the same people driving the conversation. And using some of the processes mentioned, such as effective meeting management and problem-solving team building, that can help you reach consensus and make decisions much faster. And if you're able to replicate the virtual cooler water idea or concept, then that can only be good and increase motivation and morale. But what's more important than ever, really, is that as the coronavirus will pass, but there will be future crises around the corner. So it's vitally important that by improving our virtual capability now, we won't only just come through this current crisis much stronger, we'll come through future crises stronger too. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed my presentation about how to improve the virtual capabilities of project teams. So really it's over to you guys if you've got any questions or if you've got any suggestions or things that you've done to improve the virtual capability of your teams. Increase our capabilities in this area. Any other questions or any other ideas or suggestions you'd like to put forward?
Yeah, hi Conrad, it's Magnus here.
Oh, hello, Magnus.
Hi, great webinar, by the way.
Oh, cheers, Magnus.
I was just going to add to what you talked about in Teams, and what we found very beneficial lately in Teams is the ability to record sessions you have, whether it's sprint sessions, workshops with the customer, but moreover, the ability where you can get an automatic transcript when you store the recording. So you get the transcript, and you can do that to search for keywords in a long, let's say you have a very long session or workshop where you don't have the time to go through all the content. If you weren't present.
Mm-hmm.
And you can search for keywords, and it jumps straight into the recording for those keywords that you search for. So I highly recommend do recordings of your sessions, upload it to Microsoft Streams, and activate the automatic transcript.
Brilliant. Well, that's a great suggestion, Magnus. Thanks for that. That's brilliant. Is there any other suggestions? I think while we're waiting, I think one of the things I wanted to put across as well is that as well as these sort of electronic tools, it's also important to have some process as well, structured process, which is what I was trying to suggest with the effective meeting management process and also the problem-solving team building process. Obviously, those processes can be applied in face-to-face environments, but I think for virtual meetings, you need to be a lot more structured to get the best out of them.
Hi, Conrad. It's Daniel here.
Hey, hello, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, coping.
That's good. I just want to see you, kind of hear your view on using Trello. We're using Trello, and I'm sitting 300 kilometers away from my development team, so we could have used that as a very important part of driving our development, and I think it works really, really well. But do you have any tips and tricks on kind of, best practice of how you guys using it that you can share?
I think, well, one, I would say there needs to be process around it. So the Trello boards, I think you need to support the Trello board with your daily stand-ups. I don't know if you do daily stand-ups, 15-minute stand-ups where, you go around quickly what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, and any roadblocks. The way we structured our Kanban boards, we kept it really, really simple. Don't make it overcomplicated. The lists that you have, keep them really simple. We just have, the to-do, doing, done, roadblocks. And the notifications are quite useful as well to give people a nudge. You can use labels, which are really good, so then you can start to categorize the different types of activities. So in a development project, it's not all about development. There might be some process work that needs to be done, some documentation work. So you can use different labels to categorize those, and that's really useful for reporting, and you can do filters and things like that. So there's loads of ways, and I would recommend, there's lots of really good how-to guides on YouTube and things which are easy to follow. So it's like all of these tools, Daniel. If everyone puts their effort into using it as best they can, you'll get the most from it. But there are other tools, but they can be a little bit more complex. I don't know if you heard of DevOps and Jira. Those tend to use for hardcore software development projects. But when you're running multiple projects and programs, I found that Trello was quite good because you could have a program level Trello, and then there might be project Trellos for each of the project work streams too. Yeah.
I think we're using it for on kind of a starter level, but I think it's a fantastic tool, and I think we learn as we go. The benefit of it is the ease of use and getting some structure to it and getting started and sharing in a very easy way. That's our benefit of it.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's so much better than Microsoft Project because the only person who runs Microsoft Project is the project manager. So there's no collaboration at all. So it's such a great collaborative tool. Okay, guys, I think it's probably it now. It's been an absolute pleasure giving this first ever webinar to you guys. I hope you found it useful, and I hopefully will catch up with you all very soon. Cheers, guys.